Before we start, the name is at the top of the screen. In the past, numerous nations had been destroyed. All by a single girl. Her name is Angelica Vlad Quincy. People feared her and whispered about her. The vampire princess who topples nations. The kingdom of Zildjian, a great kingdom with 500 years of history. The founding king Zildjian Harvard destroyed the aristocracy and nobles who were oppressing the people at the time. It is a country created with the aim of being a place where everyone can live happily. In the magical forest that stretches along the border of the kingdom of Zildjian, it is said that the vampire princess lives there. Angelica moves through the forest when growls stop her. Wolves circle a basket, teeth bared. She lifts her hand, and power snaps through the air. They shrink back, cowed, though her magic runs too sharp. Stepping closer, she finds a human child swaddled inside. She pokes the girl's cheek, and small eyes blink open, a giggle spilling out. Angelica's gaze softens. She is safe now, she will protect her, though she has no idea how to raise a human child. It's easy for Angelica to take a life, but the thought of raising a child makes her falter, until she tucks the hesitation away, scoops up the baby with a grin, and heads home. The staff rush to greet her, and Arya stops short, staring at the bundle in her arms. When Angelica says with a smile that she found the child in the forest, Arya presses a hand to her forehead and groans, "She found her. She's not a dog or a cat." Angelica replies if she left her there, she would be eaten by monsters, that's why she brought her home with her. Arya takes the child from her and asks what comes next. What does she plan to do with this child? With an easy smile, Angelica declares she will raise her. Arya shudders at the thought and blurts that neither she nor Fernandez has any experience with children. But Fernandez only inclines his head, calm as ever, and declares that if Angelica has decided this, then he will follow her decision. Angelica turns to the child and says for now, she will have to pick a name for her. With skin as white and beautiful as a pearl. How about Pearl? Arya smiles at the choice, satisfied, while Angelica's voice carries a spark of excitement as she adds that she'll need to get some things for Pearl. In that case, she'll head into town for a bit and asks them to care for the baby while she's gone. Arya only sighs. Outside, Angelica notices a pair of thugs tailing her. She could ignore them, but decides to indulge the distraction. One steps forward and says a well-dressed young lady like her shouldn't be wandering a place like this alone. Soon the other two close in, and all three tower over her, demanding her money and promising to spare her life if she hands it over. Arms crossed, Angelica smirks and drawls she'll have a little fun first, daring them to come at her and calling them boys. One takes the bait and lunges, only to be hurled into a wall so hard the stone crumples around him. Another recoils, calling her a monster. Angelica feigns offense, chiding him to watch his words before striking him down. The last thug collapses to his knees, begging for mercy, but she only smiles coldly and tells him she never forgives those who dare direct malice toward her. With a flick of her power, Angelica reduces the thug to ashes. The crowd gapes in stunned silence and she wishes them a pleasant day. Back at the estate, Arya is already whining that Angelica is far too unpredictable and could at least consider what it feels like for everyone else to be tossed around by her whims. Fernandez calmly states this is her way of atoning for her actions. It seems she's still quite concerned about what happened back then. Arya cannot disagree with that. He offers her tea, but she stops short when her eyes catch the crest of the saints etched on the back of the child's hand. The saint is the one who has received the blessings of the goddess. That being who bears the duty of saving people. At times, she often becomes the standard bearer for slaying monsters. And may one day become an enemy to Angelica and her companions. Just then, Angelica returns home and notices the pale faces around her, so she asks what's wrong. Arya shows her the baby's tiny hand, but Angelica doesn't seem the least bit bothered. She simply settles onto the sofa and says lazily it's fine, isn't it? Even if she has the holy saint crest, that child is already one of them. Fernandez asks. So is she not going to report this to the royal court? She replies of course she's not going to report it. It'll be too much trouble. And she's looking forward to what this child's future holds. Years later, as Pearl faces down a monster, Angelica tells her to stay calm and she'll be fine. Pearl summons her wind blades, slicing off the monster's arm, and beams, exclaiming that she did it. Angelica warns her not to let her guard down. The beast roars, charging again, and Pearl attacks once more but it still breaks through. With a flick of her finger, Angelica finishes it off and turns to Pearl, telling her she was close. Pearl pouts, snapping that she wanted to handle it on her own. Angelica only pats her head and says not to be cheeky. If she'd kept going like that, she would have been blown away. She adds that's enough training for today. Let's go home for tea. Aria's made sweets. Pearl brightens at once, her pout vanishing, and she dashes off toward home. Angelica watches her thinking, she never imagined she would have become so strong so quickly. 3 years ago, when Pearl was just 3, she toddled up to her mother with a flower crown she had made with Aria and carefully placed it on Angelica's head. Fernandez soon arrived to remind her it was time for study, and Pearl skipped off without protest. Once she was gone, Aria's expression tightened with worry, and she urged Angelica to follow her. Out in the fields, the flowers were in full bloom. Angelica frowned, puzzled, when Aria whispered that it wasn't supposed to be like this. She explained that the flowers here had all been dead, yet the moment Pearl touched one, they had bloomed back to life. Angelica didn't think the healing power of the saint who had already manifested. A saint is born with healing powers. However, to restore a withered flower to its original state, a stronger power than usual is required. And no saint with that kind of power has been born in the last few 100 years. A sly smile touched Angelica's lips. As expected, her adorable daughter was a genius and Angelica vowed to keep her happy forever. Across from her, Aria studied her with wary eyes, looking done with her. Then Angelica instructed Aria to keep a close eye on her power as using too much power might be a heavy burden, so she needed to make sure she was careful. Back in the present, they return home, and Aria welcomes them in. Angelica asks about Fernandez, and Aria explains he's at the palace meeting the new king. Before long, Fernandez steps through the door, reporting that the meeting went smoothly before his words trail off. Angelica asks what's wrong. He admits that this time King Harvard XV has given an order. The young lady must come to the castle and greet him. Angelica can already imagine Aria's temper flaring if she were to hear that. Angelica Vlad Quincy is the vampire princess and a true ancestor. She destroyed several countries over the past 1,000 years. She is still feared as the vampire princess who destroy nations. And since she contributed greatly to the founding of the Kingdom of Zildjian, that title has been around since the time of the founding king. It was supposed to have been protected as something superior to even the king. Angelica realizes in this long time it hasn't been properly conveyed, even among the royal family. Angelica looks up with a smirk and says that, as commanded, she should go and greet the king. Just then Pearl bursts in, announcing the snacks are ready. Angelica says she's coming, but Pearl halts, watching her with guarded eyes. Angelica tilts her head, asking what it is, and Pearl replies with quiet concern, asking if something's wrong. Angelica forces a softer smile and asks why, only for Pearl to murmur that her mother's face looked scary. Angelica smooths the worry away with a gentle smile, insisting it's nothing, before shifting the talk back to snacks. Later, standing before the king with Fernandez at her side, Angelica declares she has come to see him. King Harvard snaps, calling her a fool and demanding what she thinks she is. When laughter slips from her lips, he snarls, asking what's so funny. Angelica answers that he dared to call her rude, yet she hadn't thought the king himself would be so stupid. Before he can speak again, her gaze hardens, and she cuts him off with a single command, silence. She reminds him she is not his vassal. She has only stayed in this country for so long because of her connection to the founding king. The founding king promised to show her the utmost respect for all eternity, and that promise has been kept all this time. With a mocking laugh, she asks if he truly doesn't know and demands to know why he called her here in the first place. Surely he didn't summon her only to say hello. He states a war with the Empire is about to begin and she is to enlist and serve in the war. They need every ounce of strength they can get, and if she serves they can minimize the damage to their country. No. She gives him only that one word. Desperate, the king blurts, why not? She helped the founding king once, surely she should help him. Angelica replies coolly that the boy had been humble, kind, polite, nothing like the fool before her now, then looks away, muttering she has no interest in this boring conversation and starts to leave. The king narrows his eyes and commands the guards to seize her. Swords flash. Their advance stops mid-step, their bodies freeze, then crumple to the floor. Angelica's gaze turns icy. She allows one concession for the memory of the founding king and warns, in a look that could wither armies, that if he insults her again this kingdom has no future. She walks out, and behind her the king slams his fist on the table, swearing they must subjugate her at once, their country is no match for the Empire's might. Just then, a voice outside the door interrupts, apologizing as he announces Lord Gordon's arrival. When Lord Gordon steps in, a self-assured grin fixed on his face as he greets the king, asking how he is doing. The king snaps, does it seem like he's in a good mood? Lord Gordon says not at all. He heard that the true ancestor did not agree to join the war, and he heard that even their nation's elite royal knights were completely powerless. However, their opponent is the Sabian Empire, renowned as one of the strongest on the continent. In order to defeat the Empire, they have no choice but to bring the true ancestor into this no matter what. The king asks him if he came here to mock him. Lord Gordon's grin only deepens as he replies he would never do such a thing. He has come with a proposal for His Majesty. A proposal to get the true ancestor to cooperate with them. Later, a group of adventurers search the forest, moving carefully through the trees. Fender asks if they're sure the vampire is here. Kettner replies that the information came straight from the guild master, there's no mistake. Fender points out rank adventurers usually get requests to capture vampires. So why are the three of them, S-rank adventurers, being called out for this? But oh well, as long as he can have a good drink after work, he really doesn't care. Kira says he's so easygoing. This is obviously a very shady situation. Fender teases, is that the intuition of an old-timer? She snaps she's still young for a half-elf. Kettner senses something and raises a hand for silence, pressing against the air as he mutters that the place is warded, and Fender replies that must mean they are close, while Kettner turns to Kyra and asks if she can break through, and with a confident smile she says of course and begins her spell. As the barrier breaks, Angelica feels it immediately and Pearl, standing close to her mother, asks softly if she is all right, earning a soft smile as Angelica reassures her that she is fine and reminds her that her mother is strong, then steps forward with her cold expression settling back into place just as the adventurers burst in and point accusingly, declaring that she is the vampire who lives here, and she meets their eyes with calm defiance as she replies yes and asks what of it. Kettner already drawing his sword as he apologizes that it is his duty to hurt her before lunging forward, and she answers his attack with a swift magic circle flaring to life while Fender shouts for him to fall back, only to hurl himself from the other side, which makes her sharply turn her head toward him and fling a table, sending him staggering, and when Kettner, gritting his teeth, admits she is not just a regular vampire, she lets a smile touch her lips as she tells him no, she is the princess of the true ancestors. The realization slamming into all three of them at once as they recognize her as the princess who destroyed kingdoms, and she asks if they are already finished when she has yet to show her daughter what real combat looks like, before summoning multiple circles whose force knocks all of them flat to the ground, leaving Pearl watching with awe, thinking her mother is the coolest person in the world, while Kyra trembles with frustration at her own weakness, wishing she were strong like this woman before collapsing into unconsciousness, and when she wakes, she and the others are bound on the floor as Angelica's voice drifts down with a deceptively gentle offer of whether they would like tea, only for Arya to sneer that letting lowly humans into the mansion and sharing tea with them is nothing but filthy. Kira asks where is this? She replies it is her mansion they passed out so she brought them here to be treated. She gestures for them to sit, introduces herself as Angelica, and asks who they are. Kettner answers first, naming himself and the others, adding that they are all S-ranked adventurers. She calmly states it seems like they came to attack her. Kettner admits he doesn't know the details of the client, but it was a request through the Adventurers Guild. They wanted them to capture a vampire living in the magical forest. He did not think they would be dealing with the true ancestor. Angelica is pretty sure it was a request from that idiot king. She asks, so what do they plan to do with the request? Continue with it? Kettner blurts no way. He cannot even think of opposing her after seeing such a vast difference in their power. Fender mutters he is not stupid enough to make an enemy of someone once he knows they are the true ancestor. She turns to Kira and asks what about her. Suddenly, Kira speaks up, asking the princess for a favor, leaving Angelica momentarily surprised, and with pleading eyes she begs to become her apprentice, admitting she once believed magic was the one thing she could never lose to anyone, yet the princess defeated her so effortlessly, and now she longs to grow stronger, convinced Angelica holds knowledge she doesn't, before bowing her head quickly and pleading again. Frankly, Angelica doesn't want to be around humans any longer than she has to. But Pearl? She has been thinking about her since they fought. Kira is strong. She may have been no match for her in combat, but she was able to break through the ward that no one has ever broken before, and she made it deep into the forest. If it is her, she will be the one to support Pearl, who might someday end up on the sides of the humans. Angelica lets out a sigh and says okay, but on one condition. She wants her to be friends with her daughter. Kira asks, is that really all it takes? Angelica admits Pearl is not her biological daughter. She found her abandoned in the woods as a baby and raised her as her daughter. She's just an ordinary human child, not a vampire or anything. Right now she has no contact with anyone but them, and she may have to leave them at some point. And when that happens, she wants Kira to help her so she doesn't struggle. Kira jumps to her feet, stars shining in her eyes as she clasps Angelica's hand and insists she can leave it to her, while at the palace His Majesty slams his fist against the wall in fury, cursing the adventurers as useless. Lord Gordon admits he miscalculated. He never expected that even with 3S rank adventurers, the raid would fall. The king mutters the war with the Empire is near. They must do something quickly. Lord Gordon reflects for a moment before recalling the strange rumors tied to the true ancestor. He has heard that the true ancestor has a young daughter. His Majesty sharply asks, is that true? And then pauses, an idea occurring in his mind. If they take the girl and hold her hostage, they can subjugate the true ancestor. This time for sure, it has to work. Kyra trains Pearl, loosing arrows at her, but Pearl blocks with a shimmering magic shield, making Kyra smirk as she pushes harder, pouring so much power into her magic that a thick fog fills the field, and when it clears, Pearl is standing there looking offended before unleashing a blazing magic cannon that leaves Kyra overwhelmed until Angelica steps in, telling Pearl that's enough, and while Kyra collapses to the floor panting in relief, Pearl jumps with joy at her victory. Catching her breath, Kira admits she never thought she would be defeated by such a move. Pearl confesses that in a normal fight she doesn't think she could win. Angelica praises them both while pointing out there is room for improvement. Determined, Kyra says she will hunt monsters before returning to the mansion. Angelica turns to Pearl and asks if they should go home, but Pearl, lost in thought, tells her to go ahead and runs into the forest, where Kyra, drained from the mock battle, is about to head back when Pearl suddenly calls to her, claiming she sensed she had a little magic left. Kyra admits that's true but asks how she could possibly know that. Pearl only says it was a feeling and holds out her hand. Reluctantly, Kyra takes it, and the moment Pearl closes her eyes, she feels her strength returning. When Pearl finally lets go, she waves casually and walks off without another word, leaving Kyra frozen in place, staring after her in shock before deciding she must bring this to Angelica. Later that evening, she approaches her master with a serious face and tells her everything that happened in the forest. Kira has never heard of a spell that restores magical power. Moreover, she didn't sense any mana from Pearl at the time. Angelica tells her this matter must not be spoken of to others. Kira asks if she knows about this. She replies yes before confessing the story she's about to tell her now must not be spoken of to anyone. When Kira gives her word, she reveals Pearl is a saint. And that is the healing power to the saint. Kira asks does Pearl know? She replies no she doesn't. She doesn't even know her origin. And saint or not, she's still her little girl. Angelica tells Kira to treat her the same way she has been. Kira says of course. Angelica realizes it is about time for Pearl to know and wonders if she should have a proper talk with her. Later that evening, Pearl slips into her mother's room and softly says that she had said there was something important to talk about, and asks what's wrong. Angelica admits there's something Pearl needs to know. Worried, Pearl sits closer and asks what it is. Angelica takes a quiet breath before explaining softly that 6 years ago, in the depths of the woods, she found a human baby abandoned and alone. If left there, its life would have been in danger. And yet, above all else, the baby was very cute, so she brought it home and that baby was Pearl. She adds that though she isn't her real mother, she has always loved her and thought of her as her own daughter. Her voice is soft as she apologizes for not telling her sooner. Angelica starts to say that if Pearl cannot forgive her, then it's only for Pearl to cut her off, tears slipping down her cheeks as she insists the very idea of not forgiving her mother is impossible, and with trembling hand she wipes her face and begs her to think of her as her real daughter, because to her, Angelica is truly her mother, so sweet, a little protective, and someone she loves more than anything. With that, she throws her arms around her. Angelica whispers how glad she is to have found her, how happy she is to be her mom. As Pearl settles into the bed beside her, Angelica gently adds that there is one more thing Pearl needs to know, and with calm gravity tells her she is a saint. Pearl blinks in confusion and echoes saint. Angelica explains she is someone with amazing powers who helps the world and everyone. Pearl asks if that means she has to leave from here. Her mother replies no she doesn't. There are cases like that, but she's the daughter of the true ancestor and she's free to live however she wants. Holding her hand, Pearl says she will be forever with her mom. The next day, as Pearl eats her pastry, she exclaims it is delicious. She looks up at Arya and says she wishes mom had come too. Arya says her mother has always been somewhat of a homebody. And as she knows, she's incredibly beautiful. She always stands out in a crowded place. Pearl cannot deny her mom is extremely beautiful. Arya adds Pearl will surely become beautiful too. Pearl softly says that even though she isn't her real child. The words make Arya spit out her tea in shock, and she quickly asks where Pearl heard such a thing. Pearl mentions her mom told her everything. Arya frowns, as she thinks Madam should have told her, then gently assures Pearl that the young lady cherishes her as if she were her real daughter. And as for herself, she has always thought of Pearl as her real younger sister. Pearl blushes at the words and quietly says it's okay, she knows exactly what she means. Her cheeks burn hotter, and before she can stop herself, she blurts that she's going to the bathroom and dashes away. Once inside, she thinks with mortification that she really just got embarrassed and ran away. She bends down to pick up the gloves, but suddenly a cloth presses over her mouth from behind. Angelica had lain on the sofa when Fernandez had approached and gently asked if she had been worried. She had opened her mouth to deny it, but the words had stumbled out instead. She had been so worried it had felt like her stomach was sinking. That was the first time Pearl went out. 3 hours earlier, Pearl had insisted on going to the city for the first time. With all the shops in town and children her age often running errands, she had wanted the same. Angelica had nearly caved to her cuteness but had immediately refused. A child as adorable as Pearl would surely have drawn the wrong kind of attention, and if something had happened, she couldn't even have finished the thought. Pearl had argued that her mother worried too much she could have used her magic then, and with Arya teleporting her to town, she would have been safe. Even Arya had blurted out that she had wanted to go out sometimes. Faced with their eager faces, Angelica had finally relented, but only on one condition. Pearl had to stay with Arya at all times, and she had to wear the gloves Angelica had pressed into her hands. That had been the price for going to the city. The saint's crest had been on Pearl's right hand. In the forest, she hadn't needed to hide it, but in the city, where people lived, she had to. If the kingdom had known that Pearl had been a saint, they wouldn't have remained silent. She had agreed to wear it and had jumped into Angelica's arms. The gloves had had a tracking spell on them, and most importantly, Arya had been with her, so Angelica hadn't thought she needed to worry. Pearl had then looked up at her mother and asked what she had needed. Angelica had told her to get ink for the fountain pen and some tea leaves. Pearl had promised to get them and had quickly run out. Now, as she had waited for her daughter, Angelica had asked Fernandez if she hadn't been late. Fernandez had told her to calm down, it had only been 3 hours. Besides, it had been a mother's duty to be happy for her daughter's growth. She had replied that she knew, but the uneasy energy around her had only deepened. Fernandez had reassured her not to worry too much, he had been sure Pearl would be fine. Just then, Pearl had walked in, announcing that she had been home. Angelica had breathed a sigh of relief and had quickly asked if she had been alright and not hurt anywhere. Pearl had whined that her mom had worried too much, then smiled at her and teased that shouldn't she say something to people who had come home. Angelica had grabbed her daughter's hand, saying, "Welcome home." Pearl had then glanced at the bag in Arya's hands and said she had gotten ink and tea leaves and even some cookies as a treat. Angelica had thanked her warmly and had added that they should have a tea party to celebrate Pearl's very first errand out in the city. Back in the present, Arya barges into the mansion, crying and holding her gloves. She starts apologizing immediately, but Angelica tells her to calm down and explain what happened. Arya explains that she had hurried Pearl to the bathroom at the cafe because she was taking so long to return. When she had gone to check, Pearl was gone. She looked everywhere around the cafe but couldn't find her. Angelica falls silent, her heart sinking. Was she kidnapped? Once again, someone she loves. Was she going to lose her too? As her mind spins, she drifts back to a memory from long ago. Innkeeper Sarah asked her how the meal had been. Angelica had replied that she thought it was good. Sarah pouted and told her that at times like this, she was supposed to say it was delicious. So Angelica smiled and said it was delicious, making Sarah laugh and proudly declare that she had made it herself. Sarah added that she had been a little strange, her choice of words hadn't been normal at all. Angelica admitted it had been her first time interacting with a human. Sarah had only giggled as if not believing her, which had made Angelica pout, insisting she wasn't taking her seriously. Finally, Sarah had said that even if it were true, it meant Angelica had been her first friend. Angelica had looked surprised before tilting her head, considering it seriously, and said maybe. This had made Sarah laugh, adding that at least for her, Angelica had been her friend. At last, Angelica warned her not to go anywhere near the castle the next day. Tomorrow, the royal castle and the royalty living there will be burned to the ground by none other than Angelica's hand, because they insulted the true ancestor and committed an act of disrespect. It was an order from her father, the head of the family. Staying at Sarah's inn was just a way to kill time until the day of execution, but it had been a month since she had met her and her family and had come to care for them so much she didn't want to put them in danger. Sarah asked again what was going to happen tomorrow, and Angelica shifted on her feet nervously, replying that it was nothing, she just had a bad feeling about it. She warned her once more not to go anywhere near the castle and made her promise. The next day, Angelica unleashed her magic on the castle and froze when she finally spotted Sarah with her child, a wave of panic surging through her as she tried desperately to undo the spell, but the magic had already taken hold and could not be reversed. That day, Sarah had gone on a sudden shopping trip, oblivious to Angelica's warnings, leaving Angelica only able to mutter an apology among the crumbling ruins, her heart hammering with guilt. She snaps back to the present when Fernandez calls out that he would go look for Kira, and she knows the city well, maybe Kira would know something. Angelica turns to Aria and tells her to search around the cafe again and Fernandez to stay here in case Pearl comes back. No matter what, they will bring Pearl home. Never again, she won't lose another loved one because of her mistake. Angelica arrives at the royal capital of Zildjian and makes her way to the adventurers. She greets them quickly and asks Kira if she has seen Pearl. Kira says she hasn't and asks if something is the matter. Angelica explains that Pearl was in town but now she is missing. Given the situation, she thinks she was probably abducted, and even if she hasn't seen Pearl, did she see anything suspicious? Fender admits he saw some strange people a little while ago, carrying a burlap sack that looks just big enough for a child. He thought maybe they were carrying some monsters they killed, but they looked to be heading for the royal castle, not the adventurers guild. Her eyes turn ferocious at the mention of the royal castle, and the three adventurers blanch. She asks if they have any friends or acquaintances near the castle and orders that they evacuate immediately. If it's for that child, she will burn it down without hesitation, country or world, it makes no difference. Angelica arrives at the castle. Inside, the knights are preparing to change shifts, murmuring about rumors that His Majesty has picked a fight with the true ancestor. Even so, they doubt it, no matter how foolish the king, such a move would doom the country. Suddenly, one of the walls shatters, and Angelica stands there. The knights freeze, alert, demanding to know who she is. She warns them to get out of the way, or she will kill them all. When they hesitate, she mutters, "This is stupid," and calls forth her monsters. In the name of Angelica Vlad Quincy, she commands them to remove anything that stands in her way. One of the monsters lunges at a knight, and the others recoil in disbelief. No way could it be her. The true ancestor, the vampire princess who destroys nations. When she reaches the king, he smiles, thanking her for coming alone, he didn't have to send anyone. She asks where her daughter is. The king signals his men, and soon Pearl appears, her mouth bound. As she reaches for her, the man holding her presses a knife against her and the king warns that if she moves even an inch, the girl's head will roll. Another man brings a tray with an object, and the king instructs Angelica to wear it. When she asks what it is, he replies it's a magical item known for domination. If she wears it, she will never be able to resist him again. With a sinister smile, he tells her that the only way to see her daughter again is to wear the collar. She doesn't even hesitate, picking up the collar and putting it around her neck. The king bursts into laughter, declaring that now she will obey his every command. He adds that he will also reclaim the humiliation he suffered at her hands and orders her to kneel before him. Angelica steals a quick glance at her daughter, then vanishes in an instant, reappearing right in front of the king. Her eyes flash, and she hisses that he is nothing but a mere human and shouldn't get carried away. Did he really think that this kind of magical tool would work on a true ancestor? She's in disbelief. Right in front of him, Angelica shatters the collar and immediately reaches for her daughter. She asks if Pearl is okay. Pearl nods and apologizes softly to her mother. But Angelica softly says there is nothing to be sorry for, adding that once she is done with her errands, they will go home together. Then she turns her gaze back to the king and tells him sharply that he has gone too far. It is one thing if it were just her, but he laid a hand on her precious daughter. So the only way to atone for that sin is to give up his life. She gives him one moment to think back on his own foolishness and repent. Meanwhile, the castle erupts into chaos as Kira and the men struggle to calm the panicked crowd. Kettner approaches Kira and informs her that everyone in the castle town has been evacuated, and Fender is now leading the last of the evacuees to the outskirts. Kira sighs in relief. With the help of the guild master, the residents around the castle have been evacuated. She recalls the look on her face and thinks, perhaps Master truly intends to destroy this country. High above the capital, Angelica hovers with her daughter in her arms, her voice carrying over the city as she commands the people of Zildjian to hear her. She states her name is Angelica Vlad Quincy and she is a true ancestor. Their foolish king took her daughter as a hostage to force her to submit to him. From this moment on, an attack on the royal castle will commence. She will now put their foolish king to death and all those who have failed to stop this outrage. She doesn't like needless slaughter. All those who are in the vicinity of the royal castle are to evacuate immediately and they have 20 seconds to do so. She starts the countdown. People scatter. Fender yells for them to come down, the castle is still far. The king peers from a window, muttering, "No way, she will blow up the whole castle." Angelica tells Pearl to cover her ears. Starfall. The meteors slam into the castle. Once it's over, Angelica turns to her daughter, worry etched on her face, and asks if she is okay. Pearl replies that she is fine, a small smile appearing. She admits she was a little scared, but Mama came to help her right away. A rare softened expression crosses Angelica's face as she pulls her daughter into her arms and tells her she is truly glad she is safe. Just then, Arya runs toward them and quickly sweeps Pearl into her arms, apologizing for what happened. Pearl shakes her head and says it is not her fault, pointing out that the bad people were taken care of by Mama. Arya looks toward the ruins where the castle once stood and remarks that the young lady handled it with such flair. Angelica shrugs lightly and says she could not let the matter slide. That being said, the problems are still piling up. In a country where there is no one to rule now, the citizens' lives will likely fall into chaos. Kira and her friends live in this country. They gave her information about the Pearl and their lives. It's unpleasant knowing that their lives would be ruined by her actions. Besides, Pearl seems to be fond of Kira and the others. She has to do something about the people's lives for their sake. Arya snaps at Angelica, saying she's always worrying about the lower-class humans and asks if it wouldn't be better to just pray for them and leave it at that. Her words falter when her gaze lands on a pouting Pearl, who sticks out her lip and calls her a meanie, complaining that she's always saying things like that. The two of them collapse onto the floor in a tangle of dramatic laughter. Once recovered, they glance at each other and agree that they need to do something about it right away. That said, Angelica still doesn't know what to do. Now that the royal bloodline has been cut off, it would be preferable to have a powerful, noble government. But of course she doesn't know anyone. She guesses she should talk to Kira and the others about it. Meanwhile Kira watches the chaos and thinks this was Master's real attention. Just then Fender says he is so glad they didn't really attack her back then. She asks him if everything is okay in town. He replies there's still confusion, but if they have picked a fight with the true ancestors, so it is expected. Most people are just relieved it has only affected the castle. Kira mumbles that's true. They laid their hands on the true ancestor's daughter. Normally the country itself would have disappeared, so they are glad it actually ended like this. Angelica appears, thanks them for the earlier information, and says she has something important to discuss. As she begins, they listen intently. Kettner admits there certainly would be various problems if things continued like this. Fender adds there's also a possibility that the public order could worsen. She admits, if possible, she would like them to introduce her to someone who can take over the governance. And asks if there is anyone who they can think of. Kira suggests why don't they talk to the guild master of the Adventurers Guild. He is an influential man in this town and a man they can trust. He is both a powerful figure in this town and a trustworthy person. He may be able to introduce them to someone suitable. Angelica says that sounds good. Kettner says in that case they will take her to the guild. Patting Pearl on the head, he adds he is sure everyone is tired after today so they will pick her up at the mansion tomorrow. Back in the mansion, Pearl snaps that she has told everyone several times that she's fine. and that everyone has been trying to spoil her since she got home, and they are being persistent about it. Angelica says it is because this is the first time something like this has happened. Of course they are worried. She turns to her mother and insists she is really fine. Angelica says even so, is there anything she wants? She repeats anything. Her mom says yes. If there's anything she can do, she will listen to her request. She thinks about it and exclaims she wants to go to town with mom. She wants to go shopping with her or have some tea at a cafe every once in a while. Angelica shudders as she is not good with crowded places because people stare at her, and especially now with how things have become. Pearl blinks her big eyes at her mom and asks, is that a no? She sighs in defeat and says of course they can. But they should go out after the city settles down and for now, brush their teeth and go to bed. After she leaves with Fernandez, Angelica says to Arya she feels like Pearl has been getting more and more sly over the years. The next day at the Adventurers Guild, Guildmaster Gibson flips through a stack of papers, frowning and mutters this is a serious problem. According to the report, the royal castle was completely destroyed by a single blow of magic from a girl who calls herself the true ancestor. He has been busy dealing with the evacuees so he hasn't actually seen it himself, but he would rather not have a face-to-face encounter with that girl. There's a knock on the door and a voice says an adventurer has requested to see him. He instructs to send them in. A man enters and says he's sorry to bother her while he's busy, but he has something to discuss. Without looking up, he says no problem. So what troublesome matter have they brought today? He then spots the young lady among the group and asks who is she. She steps forward, greeting him and introduces herself as Angelica Vlad Quincy, the true ancestor. He regards her warily. He repeats the true ancestor. And she replies that's what she said. He quickly bows and apologizes, introducing himself informally as Gibson. Angelica recalls that he might have sent greetings to her mansion before, but Gibson shakes his head, insisting he has done nothing of the sort. Ketna reminds him of the request about a vampire in the magical forest, and Gibson admits he heard it failed. Angelica calmly reveals that she is the vampire from that request, and Gibson immediately collapses to the floor, apologizing profusely and claiming he had no idea it concerned Lady Angelica. She dismisses his apology and instructs him to lift his head, emphasizing that more important matters brought her here, the future of the country. Later, over tea, she questions how much he knows of the events, and he admits the report only gave the gist. She explains that she is searching for someone capable of protecting the nation, warning that the people will be in danger otherwise, adding that the Sabian Empire is also on the move. Simpson says that's right. From an imperial point of view, now is as good a time as any to take the offensive. She says she would like to appoint someone as soon as possible and asks if he has anyone in mind. He replies there is one person. It's Marquis Bacchus. Kira quickly asks if it is that Marquis Bacchus. He replies yes, Marquis Bacchus Roland. Angelica asks her if she knows him. She replies, blushing, he is a hero who earned many military merits in the past during the war with the Empire. In stark contrast to his fierceness on the battlefield, he is gentle and kind, treating the commoners without discrimination. And above all, he has such a handsome appearance. Angelica turns to Kettner and asks if she is okay. Kettner tells her not to worry about her. Kira is a devoted fan. Kira pulls out his picture and gives it to Angelica, saying she has 100 more. She looks at his picture and asks Gibson he's a trustworthy person, isn't he? Gibson replies yes, he can assure her of that. He says he will talk to him, he is just concerned that even with him as ruler, it will take some time for the country to come together. The concern is whether the Empire will invade before then. She says she will handle it, prompting Gibson to ask what does she mean by handle it. She asserts she meant exactly what she said. She thinks it is better not to ask about the method. He says he understands and will leave it to Lady Angelica. Now that they decided what needed to be decided, she will take her leave. He calls out to her and bows deeply, apologizing for the rudeness their country has shown her and thanking her sincerely for her generosity. She replies calmly that her daughter loves this town, so she is merely acting to keep her happy. After she leaves, he exhales sharply and mutters that he never imagined the day would come when he would speak to the vampire princess. He was so nervous he nearly threw up a few times. Kettner remarks that he doesn't look very nervous and he admits that he was doing his best. Still, he never thought he would be so considerate towards humans. In the fairy tale, strength and fear are usually the only things that are spoken of. Fender states she is the kind of princess who would raise a human child she found as her own daughter. He is sure she is much kinder than the average person. Gibson admits he didn't know that. Kyra looks at him with pleading eyes, and asks if it would be possible for her to join when he speaks to Marquis Bacchus. He simply replies no. She calls him stingy. He retorts he is not stingy. She pleads again, saying it's fine even if it means more work. He remains firm, no means no. When Angelica returns, Arya greets her warmly, asking if she managed to reach an agreement on who should reign. Angelica nods, though one small concern lingers. Arya asks what it is but she brushes it off as minor. Then, she pauses and remarks Arya is still sharp, isn't she? She replies she is. Angelica admits she has a quick favor to ask and hands her a letter. Arya agrees to do as she wishes. Suddenly, Pearl leaps into her arms and Angelica asks if she's been well behaved. Pearl beams, saying yes, and adds that she baked cookies with Mr. Fernandez. She then spins around, searching for Arya. Angelica explains that Arya is on a small errand and will surely be back soon. Meanwhile, Jamia, commander-in-chief of the Sabian Imperial Army, asks one of Gordon how did it go. Who replies there was a slight miscalculation, but everything went without a hitch. They had to encourage the incompetent king to destroy the country. They couldn't wipe out the entire country but the royal family was wiped off. The operation was largely a success. The commander says Gordon has served him well as a spy for a long time. It was absolutely necessary. It's all for the future of the empire. It is now or never to invade them, so they should get this over with. Suddenly Arya casually walks in and asks if he is the higher-ups in the country. He sternly warns that in the middle of a military meeting, he doesn't want any servants coming in here. A man steps forward, shouting threats and telling her to get out but she cuts off his head in an instant. Both the commander and Gordon stare, frozen in shock. She sighs softly, admitting she didn't intend to overdo it, though she could have used magic. Lifting the letter, she announces, by order of her lady, he is to be eliminated. The commander quickly realizes she is not an ordinary maid and asks her who is she. She retorts is it necessary to introduce herself. Gordon calls out to him in panic and admits he has heard of her in the kingdom. She is the maid who brings nations to ruins. She is also said to bear a mark of death on the left arm. The commander says they shall accept her demand, but in return would she consider leaving peacefully? Arya says she told him she lives to obey her lady's orders. So she has only one demand, and she demands him to die. The knights draw their weapons, yet she moves faster than thought, lunging at one and gripping his face, separating his head from his body. The commander's eyes widen, a normal fight is hopeless. He orders his men to evacuate the room, thinking if even one reaches reinforcements, they might still have a chance. He signals one soldier to go, she simply says he's wasting his time trying to strategize, they cannot win against her. She cuts down the fleeing men, stating coldly that resistance is pointless. The commander turns, realizing only he and Gordon remain. They are almost at the door if they can just make it out. He throws it open and shouts for reinforcements, only to freeze in horror. Every soldier outside already lies dead. She explains calmly that she has not killed everyone, only those in the building. The order was to eliminate the Imperial Army's high command, and unnecessary killing serves no purpose. Those who interfered, however, left her no choice. Gordon demands to know why the true ancestor targets them. Did they discover the plan? She repeats the word plan. No. At least not that she knows of. Gordon snaps that the true ancestor was supposed to be indifferent to human wars. She replies that her lady is kind. Rather, they should be grateful that it's only their lives that are at stake and the words hang in the air. Then something in her snaps, the smile falls away and she looks possessed. She snaps at him to just shut up and die. His voice is annoying. Her hand cleaves through Gordon in an instant, leaving the commander paralyzed with shock. He grabs his sword in desperation but she kicks him aside. With mocking disdain, she remarks nice moves for a human. Desperate, he blurts that the upper ranks of the military are destroyed, and with their deaths, the empire cannot invade the kingdom. The war will not happen anymore. She states she thinks he's mistaken. She doesn't care about war. She's just carrying out her lady's orders. Once again, he raises his sword, but before the strike can fall, she hurls him down with such crushing force that his body drives into the ground itself. Oops, louder than intended. Still, not too noticeable, so it should be fine. Her gaze drifts to her blood-stained hands, and she sighs with distaste but they are just too dead to make a fuss about it. Though she cannot wait to go home and take a bath. A few months after the fall of the royal castle, the Kingdom of Zildjian changed its name to the Republic of Roland. The monarchy political system transitioned to a council system with Marquis Bacchus as its representative. Under the new regime, the people gradually began to reclaim their daily lives. The war with the empire that had been feared for so long didn't happen. Then one day, as she is having a date with Pearl, everyone stares at her. It is only natural that she would stand out after what she did, but it is too hard to eat. Pearl points out she hasn't eaten at all and asks if she has a stomach ache. Angelica replies she is fine and not to worry, it is just she was thinking she's really standing out. Maybe they should have gone out a little later instead. But according to Pearl, everyone would still look at her no matter when they came. Because Mama is beautiful. She is sure even now everyone is thinking she is so beautiful. She looks at her daughter with a soft gaze, thinking it's definitely not why she's standing out. Angelica asks the shopkeeper if they can have everything in the showcase. The shopkeeper stiffens, clearly taken aback. Pearl quickly apologizes on her mother's behalf, insisting they don't need it and whispering that she shouldn't scare the shopkeeper like that. Before Angelica can reply, the door opens and a man steps inside. His voice cuts through the quiet as he announces he was told the true ancestor is here, immediately drawing both their attention. He approaches her and greets her, introducing himself as Bacchus Roland, noting he heard of her presence in the city. Pearl quietly asks who he is. Angelica answers softly he is the most important person in the city at this moment. Pearl pales at the thought and blurts out nervously, asking Bacchus if he intends to take her away like the king once tried. The man freezes at her words, eyes widening in shock, before he assures her that he would never harm her and gives his word on it. Gently, he asks for her name. After a moment's hesitation, Pearl answers that her name is Pearl. He chuckles lightly, saying they can say it was luck after what their country has done. He knows it is impolite. But he would like her to stay in this country. She asks is it because it would be a strategic advantage. He replies absolutely not. However, he would like her who have watched over this land for such a long time to witness the future of this country which has just begun, and of course, this is his personal wish. Angelica asks Pearl if she wants to stay in this country. Pearl replies yes, because there are lots of cafes with delicious cakes. Angelica lets him know for the time being she plans to live in this country just as she has been, but if he ever does something as foolish, she will burn the country to the ground. He gives a shaky laugh and says he will do best to ensure that doesn't happen. Bacchus excuses himself, pausing at the ladies' table to remind them it must be hard for her to eat while they are staring so intently, urging them to show restraint. Once he leaves, Pearl murmurs that he seemed kind. Angelica agrees, noting he appears far more trustworthy than the former king. Having lived here for several 100 years, Angelica does have some attachment to it. She is not saying it is going to be a good country, but with him the people will likely be able to choose a future where they can live in peace. Angelica says the cake is delicious, isn't it? Pearl beams it is, and there are lots of other good cafes. As she grows, so will her saintly powers. It won't be long before people find out who Pearl really is. When that happens, will the country really refrain from interfering with her? Angelica reminds herself there is no use in worrying about it. She doesn't know what the future holds, but no matter what happens, she will continue to protect Pearl's future. And that concludes the video today. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe. Leave a comment if you want another part.